Arrogant billionaire's bet on a poor waitress reveals an incredible, life-changing love story in small-town America. Casey stood behind the counter of the Maple Grove Diner, her bright smile lighting up the dimly lit room like a burst of sunshine. The din of clattering plates and sizzling bacon filled the air while the aroma of fresh coffee wafted around, wrapping patrons in a comforting embrace. At just 25, she juggled more than just orders. She balanced her ailing mother's care and the needs of her two younger siblings, embodying resilience with a heart of gold. Every daily struggle bled into her spirit like ink on paper, but hope clung to her like a beloved old sweater. One bustling afternoon, amid the hum of laughter and chatter, the door swung open with a gust. In strode Jake, a 30-year-old tech billionaire who felt trapped in a world of opulence. Born into privilege, he lived in a fast-paced city swirl, yet a dare from friends propelled him into the quaint diner, eyes wide, intrigue bubbling beneath his polished exterior. As he watched Casey dash around, laughter ringing out like bell chimes, he couldn't help but feel a pull toward this simple life. Noticing her warm interactions with the regulars, a mischievous idea sparked in his mind, a bet. Could he win her heart in a month? Jake approached Casey, his charm cloaked in naivety. With gifts wrapped in shiny paper and extravagant outings, he hoped to sweep her off her feet. The small-town community eyed him with skepticism, doubts hanging like storm clouds over a sunny sky. But Casey, wise beyond her years, refused to let herself be swept away, eyes steady and unyielding. "I appreciate the kindness, really," she'd say, her smile tightening just enough to hint that she saw through his act. Just as Jake began to fathom the magnetic pull of Casey's world, disaster struck. A sudden flood darkened their town, transforming familiar streets into rivers of chaos. It was in that moment of crisis that Casey's true colors shone brightest. She sprang into action, rallying the community to help neighbors and organize donations. Her heart expanded with every warm embrace and expression of gratitude from those she helped, proving her worth extended far beyond wealth. Jake watched all of this unfold, awe creeping into his heart. In the midst of this turmoil, he realized that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars but in compassion, humility, and strength. Just as clarity settled in, the truth of his bet crashed down like a wave. Confrontation ignited between them. Casey, raw and vulnerable, demanded acknowledgement. "I'm not a trophy, Jake. I won't let anyone including you define my worth." Her voice trembled, the cast of her frustration deepened the shadows in his eyes. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Emotions swirled around them, discontent and yearning colliding like a thunderstorm. Casey felt her heart ache, while Jake wrestled with the truth of his past. Could genuine connection rise from this deception? As the small town stitched itself back together, Casey and Jake stood at a crossroads, fighting against their own demons. Would Jake rise to prove that he could cherish a love forged through sincerity? As they faced the wreckage of a bet-turned-betrayal, the question loomed heavy in the air: could love survive this unsteady ground? Jake's heart pounded in his chest, the weight of Casey's words still ringing in his ears. He stood there, the din of the diner fading into a dull roar as the reality of his actions washed over him like the water that had so recently flooded the town. He felt like a deer caught in headlights, torn between the life he once knew full of parties, riches, and surface-level interactions and the genuine warmth radiating from Casey, a force so strong and pure. As the days passed, the floodwaters began to recede, but the aftermath left its mark on both Casey and Jake. Less than a week after the disaster, the diner buzzed with renewed energy. The community rallied together, rebuilding what had been lost. Casey worked tirelessly, her spirit unbroken. Every smile she offered felt like a beacon of hope to the townsfolk. They admired her strength, and from behind the counter, Casey encouraged Jake to find his place among them, but for Jake, it wasn't simple. He was still haunted by his initial intentions and the way he had treated Casey. So that morning, after a long night of soul-searching, he mustered the courage to approach her. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice nearly swallowed by the clatter of plates and conversation. Casey looked up from her task, brow furrowed. He could see the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, but she nodded, leading him to a quieter corner of the diner. The view outside offered a reflecting pool of what they had both been through: broken trees, muddy streets, and the flicker of rebuilding. "Listen, Casey," he started slowly, searching for the words that could bridge the gap he had created. "I was an idiot. I came here to win a bet," she finished, her tone clipped. "You weren't serious about any of this. You don't really have any idea who I am." The hurt was evident in her voice, and it cracked something deep inside Jake. He had been living in shadows, and she was the light he desperately needed. "You're right. I thought I could just charm my way into your heart. I didn't understand. I didn't see you." Casey crossed her arms, her expression softening just a fraction, but he could tell it was still guarded. "What do you see now?" "I see someone who cares deeply about the people around her. I see strength when others would have faltered. I see value that cannot be measured by money." He stepped closer, his voice earnest. "Casey, I've spent my life surrounded by luxury, yet the richness you show is something I want to learn from." She visibly struggled with his words, her heart caught between hope and wariness. "You're saying all the right things now. But can you promise that this isn't just another facade?" Jake nodded, taking a deep breath. "I promise. I don't want to hide anymore. I want to get to know you, the real you. Not the waitress at the diner, but the woman who rallied the town, the one people look up to. Can you give me that chance?" Tears threatened to spill from Casey's eyes as conflicting emotions swirled within her. The ache in her chest softened a bit, but the fear of being hurt still lingered. Just as she opened her mouth to reply, the door to the diner swung open, and a familiar face peeked in the mayor, soaked in mud, and visibly shaken. "Casey," he called, his voice straining. "There's another storm coming. We need help." Casey turned to Jake, adrenaline pumping in her veins. "This isn't over," she whispered urgently. "I'll think about it. Right now, we have lives to save." As she left to rally the community once more, Jake stood at the diner counter, conflicted and moved. The storm outside mirrored the chaos in his heart. Would he be able to step up, not just as a wealthy stranger but as an equal partner in Casey's world? With determination flooding his bones, he vowed to show her he could be more than just a bet. He would prove that with a heart open to sacrifice, even the highest stakes couldn't measure the strength of love. As the storm clouds gathered again on the horizon, both their paths thickened with uncertainty. Would Jake rise to the challenge, and how would Casey greet him when the next storm passed? The questions loomed as shadows danced on the diner walls. The air inside the diner crackled with tension as Casey rushed outside, her heart thumping a frantic beat. She couldn't shake off the heaviness of Jake's words, a wildfire igniting the cautious hope within her. Yet, the urgency of the impending storm consumed her thoughts. Lives depended on the community banding together, and she felt a surge of purpose. "Everyone. We need to secure the shelters and stock up on supplies," Casey called out as she flew through the threshold, the familiar faces of the townsfolk shining with determination. People gathered around her, eyes wide with anxiety. She organized teams quickly, her voice steady amidst the chaos. Jake watched Casey from a distance, his heart swelling with admiration. She wasn't just a waitress anymore, she was a leader. Her passion lit a fire beneath him. It fueled his ambition to step outside the life of privilege he'd known and immerse himself in something real, something that mattered. But could he handle it? "Jake!" A voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Sam, the local carpenter. You're in this too. We need every pair of hands we can get. You're not leaving, right? Jake hesitated. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders, mixing with his fear of failure. He didn't know the first thing about disaster relief, but Casey's presence loomed in the back of his mind, an anchor and a guiding star. Yeah, I'm here. What do you need me to do? With a newfound sense of purpose, Jake followed Sam toward the town's community center, the previous glamour of his life feeling like a distant memory. As they boarded up windows and sandbagged the entrance, he felt the rough texture of earth underneath his fingernails, a stark contrast to the polished surfaces he was used to. Hours passed, the storm clouds thickening overhead. Thunder rumbled like an angry beast, and the winds picked up, howling around them as they secured the last of the barriers. Despite the chaos, Jake felt alive. Each moment spent working alongside the townsfolk, witnessing their resilience, chipped away at his past. Hey! Casey called over the sound of the wind, her hair whipping around her face like a crown. He barely recognized her, yet the fierceness that radiated from her filled the space between them. You did good today, Jake. Really good. Her praise ignited a warmth in him, but he sensed a wall still built between them. He wanted to break it down, to tell her once more how much she meant to him, but fear gripped at his throat. Just as she turned to grab more supplies, a blinding flash lit up the sky, followed by a crack that shook the ground. Jake's stomach dropped. Casey, watch out! He shouted, but there was no time. A tree branch, torn loose by the wind, came crashing toward her. Jake acted on instinct. He dashed forward and shoved her to the ground, the branch barely missing them but sending a cascade of debris flying. They landed hard, gasping for breath as Casey looked into Jake's eyes, shock etched on her face. What were you thinking? She panted, her voice a mix of fear and disbelief. I couldn't let you get hurt, he replied, his heart racing not just from the near miss but from the realization of what he had just done. In that moment, surrounded by worry and adrenaline, something shifted between them. Jake saw the flicker of something different in Casey's eyes, a blend of gratitude and confusion, perhaps even strength. Why would you risk yourself for me? She asked, vulnerability threading her words. Because I care about you, Casey, he said, his voice steady despite the storm raging around them. I want to be part of this, part of your life. I want you to give me that chance. Before she could respond, the wind howled again, louder and fiercer, as if nature itself was torn between their moment. The connection hung in the air, a question yet to be spoken, a choice yet to be made. Would Casey let her heart open to him amidst the chaos? Or would the storm outside drown out the possibility of something new blossoming between them? As they lay in the soaked earth, Jake held his breath, hoping for an answer that could change everything. The storm intensified, and as if on cue, the wind picked up, swirling around them and sending debris skittering across the ground. Jake could hear the distant wail of sirens, merging with the growl of thunder. He felt the urgency of the moment, but all he could focus on was Casey's gaze, a mixture of fear, surprise, and something else he couldn't quite decipher. Please, she whispered, almost lost in the howling winds. She searched his eyes, and for a split second, Jake thought he saw a flicker of hope there, waiting to burst into flame. But before he could respond, the chaos of the storm surged around them, roaring to life as if challenging him to fight for that moment. Casey! Shouted Sam, rushing over with another group of volunteers. We have to get everyone to the community center. It's safer there. Jake helped Casey to her feet, her hands trembling slightly as she brushed dirt from her clothes. What do we do? She asked, a glimmer of the leader she had become shining through her uncertainty. We get the supplies, and we herd everyone inside, he said, his voice diving into that thrilling sense of urgency that had engulfed him since she called everyone to action. He could feel the steady rhythm of his heart matching the frantic pace of the storm outside. They raced back to the diner, other townsfolk rushing past them with boxes of canned goods and blankets. Casey moved in perfect sync with Jake, her determination infectious. She was the anchor for the group, keeping everyone focused and safe while the storm's fury threatened to spin into chaos. As they reached the diner, they caught sight of Mrs. Henderson, the elderly owner, struggling to move a heavy crate alone. Without a second thought, Casey dashed over to help. "Don't worry, Mrs. H. We've got this." Jake joined her, and together they lifted the crate while Mrs. Henderson offered an appreciative nod, her eyes glistening with gratitude. It struck Jake how this community was bound together by resilience, people willing to fight through fear for each other's well-being. He urgently wanted to be part of something greater than himself. In that moment, with Casey by his side, he knew he could. The storm intensified, lightning splitting the sky again with another blinding flash. They all clustered together, eyes wide, exchanging glances as they awaited further orders from Casey. She was in her element now, directing people, hands on hips, confident yet alive with the weight of the task at hand. Jake felt an overwhelming force nudging him forward, urging him to step fully into this moment beside her. "Let us move," Casey called out, snapping him back to reality as the winds howled and rain began to drench them. Still holding her gaze from earlier, the one full of questions, he felt something shift inside him. He had thrown himself into action, willing to risk everything for her, and this was just the beginning. As the last group of town folk piled into the shelter, Casey turned to Jake, breathless and soaked to the bone. "We did it!" she shouted, a joyous laugh escaping her lips amidst the chaos. "We made it in time." But behind that joy, he sensed a quiet fear lingering. Her blue eyes reflected determination and wariness. They both knew the storm was far from over. "Is everyone okay?" he asked, his heart racing not just from the adrenaline of the storm but from the rush of feelings he couldn't ignore any longer. For a brief moment, the chaos outside felt muted, the atmosphere vibrating with an electric charge that pulled them together. She nodded, but Jake could see the flicker of worry still present. The storm outside loomed larger than any fear inside, and it felt like he was dangling on the edge of something profoundly significant. "Jake," she said, reaching for his arm, the connection between them sending a direct spark of urgency through him. "I need you to promise me something. If this gets worse, you stay with me, no matter what." Her words, heavy with unspoken meanings, lingered between them. Jake felt his heart clench in response. "I promise," he replied, his voice calm but burning. "Inside. I won't leave you." But as the door slammed shut behind them and the winds howled on, he realized they were not just fighting against the storm. They were standing on the brink of a deeper connection, one that seemed destined to grow amidst the wild chaos. Could he face both the storm and his feelings for her together, or would the tempest sweep one of them away? Hope wrestled with fear as lightning struck once more, illuminating Casey's face raw and powerful, pulsing with intensity. Jake knew then, this was just the beginning of their battle, both to save their town and understand what was truly growing between them. Would they be able to embrace their feelings in the midst of turmoil, or would the storm tear them apart before that chance came? Casey scanned the room, her breath coming in short bursts as the storm raged outside. The community center was bustling with terrified but determined faces, each person doing their part to keep one another safe. She felt a surge of pride for her town, yet the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. "Jake," Casey called, feeling a sense of urgency rise within her. "We need more blankets for everyone. Can you help me grab some from the supply room?" "Sure thing," Jake said without hesitation, his eyes steady and reassuring. He followed her, and a warmth spread through Casey simply from his presence. In a time of uncertainty, he was like a calm in the storm, grounding her to the moment. Inside the supply room, they rummaged through boxes, Casey throwing a few extra items into their arms: extra clothes, canned goods, anything they could find to ensure everyone would be as comfortable as possible. As they worked side by side, their hands brushed against one another more than once, and each time felt electric. "Casey," Jake began, breathing heavily as he hoisted another box, "are you scared?" She paused, her heart skipping. "Yeah, I am," she admitted, glancing at him. But this is what we prepared for. We can't let fear stop us. He nodded slowly, his brow furrowed with concern. I wish I knew what would happen when all this is over. The uncertainty loomed large, and Casey could feel the shared anxiety between them. We'll get through this, Jake. We have to believe that. Just then, a loud crash echoed from somewhere in the building, making everyone jump. Jake and Casey exchanged a quick glance, their hearts racing. The storm was getting worse, and they knew time was running out. We need to check it out, Casey said, gripping his arm tightly. Stay close to me, Jake urged, his voice low but firm. Together, they pushed through the door, stepping into the dimly lit hallway. Water dripped from the ceiling, and the sound of wind outside rattled the windows. As they approached the source of the noise, Casey's pulse quickened. Thoughts tumbled in her head. What if something terrible happened? What if they were too late? The storm outside felt like more than just a weather event, it felt like a battle, one that threatened to swallow everything whole. Finally, they turned the corner and found a large tree limb had crashed through one of the windows. Glass lay scattered across the floor, and debris from outside was being whipped around the room. A child cried in the distance, and Casey's heart clenched. We need to clear this, she said, her voice rising above the howling wind. Together, they moved instinctively, clearing the glass from the area. Casey worked feverishly, her adrenaline surging as she focused on the task at hand. But even amidst the chaos, she couldn't shake the feeling of Jake's presence, solid and unwavering at her side. Casey, keep your head down. Jake shouted as another gust slammed against the wall, sending a wavering shudder through the building. She ducked, feeling his hand grip her arm, pulling her closer just as a piece of wood flew past them. Her heart raced for a different reason then. It wasn't just fear for their safety, it was the rush of being so close to him, feeling his strength and determination, knowing they were partners in this fight. With the place finally secured, Jake turned to her, his expression serious yet filled with warmth. I didn't think I could find this much courage in such a scary moment. Jake, she whispered, softening as they shared a glance that seemed to stretch time. Courage isn't about the absence of fear. It's about stepping forward despite it. Suddenly, a loud crack of thunder echoed through the building, causing them to flinch. The wind howled even louder, and the energy shifted between them. It was charged and alive, like the very storm outside had turned to something else entirely. Maybe we are more than just this storm, he said softly. The weight of his words hung in the air, and Casey realized they were standing on edge, caught between the tempest and whatever awaited them next. Yeah, Casey breathed, heart pounding as she stepped close, but how do we make it through both? Jake met her gaze, determination etched on his face. Together. Outside, the storm shook the world, but inside, a different kind of energy sparked between them. Together they faced danger with hope and maybe something more. The question lingered in the air, unspoken yet palpable. Would the storm unite them or tear them apart? As the winds howled on, the future felt uncertain, but one thing was clear, they would weather this, together. Would they embrace what was blossoming between them amidst the chaos, or allow the storm to keep them at bay? The wind howled outside like a wild beast, but inside, the community center felt strangely warm. It was a sanctuary amidst the chaos. As Casey and Jake locked eyes, the noise seemed to fade, leaving only the thumping of their hearts, synchronized in a moment of shared anxiety and budding connection. Let us get back, Casey said, shaking her head to clear it, aware of how the intimate moment had sparked something deep within her. The urgency of their mission snapped her back to reality. They needed to check on the others. Jake nodded, though his eyes lingered on her face. Yeah, we should. He hesitated, as if wanting to say more but held back. Casey felt the weight of his gaze and it sent a thrill through her. Was this all just adrenaline? Or was there something deeper blossoming in the heart of uncertainty? They moved back down the corridor, careful of the shards of glass and splintered wood scattered on the floor. Every now and then, Casey's hand brushed against Jake's. Each time sent a flutter through her chest, igniting a hope she hadn't dared to entertain before. "Casey!" A voice called from a nearby room. It was Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who had become a mother figure to many in the community. Her face was pale with worry as she rushed toward them. "Come quick!" The children. Casey's heart sank. "What is it?" "There's a few kids trapped in the gym. The roof is leaking and we can't get to them." The urgency shot through Casey. "Jake, we have to go." They sprinted to the gym, adrenaline coursing through them. As they arrived, the sight that met them made Casey's heart drop. Water pooled on the floor, and a small group of frightened kids huddled in a corner, their faces streaked with tears. They needed to act fast. "Okay," Casey shouted, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're here now. Just stay close to us." Jake moved next to her, assessing the situation. "We'll get them out. Just follow our lead." While Casey talked the kids through it, Jake quickly found a path through the debris. "We have to get them behind that partition. It's the safest spot." Casey nodded and watched him, her chest tight with admiration. He was fearless, ready to face the storm for those kids. "Okay, on the count of 3, we're going to move. 1, 2, 3, let us go." Together, they ushered the kids carefully, forming a protective barrier around them. The water dripped steadily above them, and each sound felt amplified: the crack of thunder, the distant wail of the wind, and the frightened gasps from the children. As they neared the partition, Casey glanced at Jake, their eyes locking for just a moment in understanding, a silent promise that they would protect these kids, no matter what. Suddenly, with a deafening crash, a piece of the ceiling caved in right behind them, sending debris flying in all directions. Time seemed to slow, and Casey felt a rush of instinct. "Down!" She screamed, flinging herself over the nearest child just as Jake leaped to shield another. Dust and wood rained down, and chaos erupted. Casey was aware of the weight of the child beneath her and the warmth of Jake's body as he crouched beside them. When the storm settled, they slowly rose to check on the kids. "Oh my God, are you okay?" she asked, brushing debris from the child's shoulders. They nodded, wide-eyed and shaking. Relief flooded Casey, but it was quickly overshadowed by a sharp gaze from Jake. "Casey, we need to move them outside," he urged, urgency returning to his voice. "Before more comes down." The storm was far from over, but as they quickly led the frightened kids to safety, Casey couldn't shake the feeling of connection with Jake. How they worked in tandem, how much she trusted him. It was as if they were dance partners in this chaotic storm. Once outside, as everyone huddled together, Casey felt the weight of what they had just faced settle over her, a mixture of adrenaline and fear. But in that moment, it was the warmth of Jake's hand tightening around hers that anchored her spirit. They had made it through this storm, together, but there was still a brewing tempest that neither of them could fully understand, between the winds of fear and the blossoming feelings that danced in the air around them. "Casey," Jake began, but the words hung, trapped between the chaos outside and the stillness within. "Let us just breathe for a moment," she replied, her voice steady despite the whirlwind around them. But what if this was just the calm before an even bigger storm? The roar of the wind outside felt like an angry beast trying to claw its way back in, but inside, the tension had shifted. Now, huddled with the other survivors just outside the gym's entrance, Casey's heart raced, not just from fear but from the electric connection with Jake still buzzing between them. She could feel his thumb stroking gently over her knuckles, grounding her even as the storm raged on. Surrounding them, the kids clustered together, eyes wide with fear but faces now tinted with hope as they listened to Mrs. Thompson's comforting voice, explaining that they were safe for the moment. But Casey's mind darted. What if this was just temporary? They had escaped the gym, yes, but the storm was relentless and growing. It felt like an army was poised to march upon their fragile peace. "Is everyone all right?" Casey called, forcing herself to project calmness. She scanned the group 10 pairs of eyes, all looking to her and Jake for reassurance. Each child's worry was palpable, as if they were all connected by threads of anxiety. One little girl, her hair wild and damp, raised a shaking hand. I want my mom," she whimpered. Casey's heart twisted at the sight. "I know you do, sweetie," she said softly, kneeling beside her. "We'll get you to her, I promise. Just hold on to my hand." The girl nodded, tears pooling at the corners of her eyes. Before she could say more, a loud crack echoed through the air. Everyone jumped. Casey felt Jake's body tense beside her, and instinctively, she turned to him. His eyes were fixed on the storm, unsure and ready for action, but there was something else there too. "Jake," she murmured, squeezing his hand tighter. "What do we do next?" He hesitated, assessing their surroundings, the wind howling louder now, rattling the windows of the community center as if they were about to break. "I think we need to head to the kitchen. It's a stronger part of the building. We can take the kids there and make sure everyone knows we're safe." "Good idea," she responded, adrenaline starting to pump again. Rising to her feet, she rallied the children. "All right, everyone. We're going to move again. Stay close, hold hands, and follow me." Jake took the lead, affirming their path, while Casey brought up the rear, making sure no one was left behind. Each step felt heavy with responsibility. She was acutely aware of how much she cared for these kids, and for Jake. It was a dizzying realization. This storm had stripped away so many layers, exposing raw emotions that were both scary and exhilarating. As they made their way through the hall, a sharp gust of wind pushed against the door, rattling it hard enough to threaten the hinges. "Quick! Get inside!" Jake shouted, ushering everyone forward. Once inside the kitchen, the atmosphere shifted again. The smell of stale coffee and the warmth from the industrial ovens engulfed them. They were safe, for now. Everyone quickly found a place around the long table, and Casey felt an odd sense of normality return for just a moment. "Well done, Casey," Jake said quietly, his voice low so only she could hear. "You're incredible with them." The compliment warmed her more than the hot air swirling in the room. "I couldn't do it without you," she breathed, their faces inches apart. What was this bond they were forging in the eye of destruction? As if sensing their moment, one of the older kids piped up from the back, "Do you think the storm will take our house?" "It might, but we'll find a way to rebuild," Jake said with an unexpected confidence. The kids nodded in understanding, though Casey could see the concern lingering in their eyes. But what if failing wasn't just about houses? What if this storm was a reflection of their lives, crashing into everything they thought they could hold on to? The question loomed heavy in Casey's mind as she caught Jake's gaze again. It was as if they were asking each other without words, how could they keep hope alive when everything around them seemed ready to crumble? The wind shrieked a response outside, and for a brief moment, they all stood still. Together. Would they ride out this storm, or would it tear them apart, leaving only fractured pieces behind? The kitchen door rattled ominously again, and a flash of lightning brightened the dim space, illuminating their worried faces. What secrets would this storm reveal next? Thunder cracked like a gunshot, shaking Casey's resolve. She glanced at Jake, and the intensity in his eyes matched the storm outside. The children held their breath, and for a moment, the world outside felt frozen, just like the fear gripping their hearts. "Let us all remember to breathe," Casey said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We're safe in here." She approached the table of young faces, the light casting shadows that made their worried expressions appear even more vulnerable. One boy, his shoulders shaking slightly, whispered, "What if the roof blows off? We're strong together, remember?" Jake reassured, his tone firm. "The kitchen is one of the best places to be during a storm like this. We have a good roof, and we can hang tight until it passes." Casey watched the kids nod, trying to mirror the confidence Jake exuded. Still, inside, she felt a storm brewing of her own, a mix of panic and helplessness. We're all family here now, she added, forcing a smile. Who wants to come up with a fun game to play while we wait? Silence filled the room for a heartbeat, then little hands shot up, anxious to distract themselves from the chaos outside. A sense of warmth washed over her. Let us play charades. Someone shouted, breaking into nervous giggles. Great idea. She cheered, her heart lifting. As they began to play, laughter slowly filled the kitchen, blending with the howling winds. Jake joined in, leading the way with silly gestures that sent the kids into fits of giggles. But then, just as Casey thought they had found a moment of peace, the lights flickered, and the shadows shifted ominously. The laughter waned, replaced by a ripple of apprehension. Don't worry. Jake raised his voice above the growing tension. It's just the storm playing tricks. Stay close. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from somewhere deeper within the building. The children's laughter turned to gasps, eyes wide, searching for comfort. Casey? A girl with glasses and a worried frown made her way to Casey's side, clinging tightly to her sleeve. What was that? I don't know, but it's okay. We're still safe here, she said, kneeling to look into the girl's eyes, her own heart racing. Let us all stick together and count to 10. We'll be all right. Together, they started counting, voices tiny yet loud enough against the storm. Casey felt surrounded by a growing sense of responsibility. This moment felt pivotal. It was more than just the storm outside, it was the fear of what waited beyond this kitchen door, the uncertainty of everything they might lose. As they reached 10, the tension eased, and just like that, laughter filtered back, though it felt edged with fragility. Jake smiled at her, a shared understanding passing between them. But just then, another loud crash sounded, this time much closer, an all-consuming noise that rattled the very foundation of their fort. The kitchen door swung inward, creaking under the pressure of the wind. Everyone back! Jake shouted, instinctively stepping in front of the kids as if he could shield them from the unknown threat. Stay calm. Casey shouted, her voice rising above the tempest. But her mind raced. What if they weren't as safe as they had thought? What if the storm had more surprises in store, and they were left to face its wrath unprepared? With the door still trembling in the wind, she clenched her fists, the sound of her heartbeat echoing in her ears. Would they find a way not only to survive the storm outside but perhaps the storms brewing within each of them? In that charged moment, she realized they might not just be fighting against the winds but battling the very fears anchoring them down. What awaited them on the other side of that door? Would the bonds they had forged hold strong enough to face whatever lay ahead? The door gave way with a dreadful creak, revealing a swirl of darkness beyond. The wind howled, pushing against the kitchen's warmth like a malevolent force eager to invade their sanctuary. Casey instinctively put herself in front of the children, eyes darting between the door and Jake, who remained a stalwart protector. What do we do? One of the kids, a little girl with freckles and curly hair, whimpered, her voice barely audible over the noise. Jake steadied his breath, glancing back at the kids with a comforting smile. We stay put. Casey and I will figure this out. His voice was strong, but Casey could see the uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Casey's heart raced as she looked at the storm, its energy rippling through the night. Let us all sit on the floor together, she instructed, her voice calm as she guided the children to gather around her. If we sit together, we can see each other, and it'll be easier to stay brave. The kids quickly huddled close, forming a tight circle on the kitchen floor. In moments like this, Casey found that silence could be deafening. It loomed over them thicker than the room's shadows, reminding her of the danger outside. Suddenly, another crash echoed from above, a sound that reverberated deep in her chest. The kids flinched, their wide eyes mirroring her own fear. We'll keep counting. Remember? Jake suggested, lowering his voice. Let us do it together, and it'll drown out the noise. Okay, Casey whispered, taking a deep breath to steady herself. 1, 2 As the children joined in unison, their little voices filled the kitchen. Their spirit lifted the heavy air around them, and Casey felt a rush of protectiveness not just for the kids, but for herself too. This moment mattered. They all needed to believe they were safe, even if the storm was raging outside. The counting continued, and with each number, Casey's pulse slowed just a touch. She watched the children, their eyes sparkling with determination as they focused on the rhythm of their voices. They were fighting back, in a way, pushing the fear into the corners of the room. But with every count, Casey's mind raced with doubts. What if help didn't arrive? What if something happened to them? No, she couldn't think that way. The power of togetherness felt palpable, like a shield against the chaos surrounding them. All right, let us come up with a story, she suggested, hoping to distract them from the storm. Who wants to start? Hands shot up, and eager voices chimed in, each child adding a piece to a narrative unfolding before her eyes. A rabbit who wanted to fly, a cat who dreamed of being a superhero. The whims of their imaginations wove a comforting tapestry of joy within the confines of a stormy night. Minutes passed, each moment stretching out as the tale escalated from adventure to adventure. Laughter returned, peeking through the tension like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. But then a blinding flash lit up the kitchen, followed by a crack of thunder that shook the very ground beneath them. Jake instinctively pulled Casey close, and together they shielded the children, a human barrier against the fear they had worked so hard to chase away. With everything on the line, Casey squinted through the chaos. The thoughts swirled in her mind, this was no ordinary storm. They were on the edge of something life-changing, something that could bond them forever. Whatever happens next, she thought, fighting against the growing dread, we'll face it together. And as the wind roared, they waited, hearts pounding, a single question echoing in her mind: what would they find on the other side of this storm? Would it bring them together even more, or would it pull them apart? The storm continued to howl like a beast outside, but within the kitchen, there was a different kind of intensity, a fierce bond forming through shared fear and hope. As the children's laughter rang out around her, Casey held on tightly to the moment, scared yet exhilarated. She and Jake had become pillars for these kids, symbols of strength and light amid the chaos. Suddenly, the storm's ferocity reached a new height. A loud crack vibrated through the air, and the lights flickered again before plunging them into darkness. The children shrieked, and Casey felt their fear swell like a tide. She quickly grounded herself and spoke with warmth. Remember, we're all together. Just hold hands and keep your voices steady, okay? Jake squeezed her hand, a silent agreement that they wouldn't let fear dominate. 1, 2, 3, Jake started, leading them in counting again, his voice a calm melody amidst the chaos. As they counted, she stole glances at him, marveling at his unwavering presence. The man who once seemed so far removed from her world had transformed into a partner she never knew she needed. He was right beside her now, not as a wealthy outsider but as an equal, willing to brave the storm for everyone in the room. With each count, she felt their fear begin to unravel, laughter filtering through as they invented a heroic rabbit and a cat soaring through the skies. Casey could see the flicker of their imaginations igniting their spirits, even if only for a moment. They were free. She wanted to hold on to that light as they faced whatever was still to come, but fate had other plans. The kitchen door slammed open with a violent gust, the swirling storm pushing in like a dark wave. Chaos erupted as the wind howled through the open doorway, sending chairs skidding across the floor. Casey's heart thundered in her chest as she instinctively moved in front of the children. "Get behind us!" she shouted, holding her ground with Jake at her side. In that moment, something shifted within her, a surge of courage she didn't know she possessed. "We won't let it take us," she declared, her voice rising above the tumult. "As long as we're together, it can't bring us down," Jake added, standing tall, a shield against the storm. His determined gaze met hers, and she felt the weight of their connection deepening, a promise that went beyond words. With their hearts synchronized, they charged the storm, hand in hand with the children who now mirrored their strength. They moved closer together as one family, shielding each other against the chaos. Driven by shared resolve, the storm continued to batter the shelter, and the sound of splintering wood echoed in the distance. But surrounded by laughter and warmth, Casey felt the fear fade away, the power of community and love wrapped around them like an unbreakable shield. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the storm's fury shifted. The winds lessened, and the torrential rain began to settle into a steady patter. It was like the world was taking a breath, allowing a moment of calm amidst the chaos. Everyone stood still, catching their breath. "Is it over?" one of the kids asked, looking around in disbelief. Casey shared a hopeful glance with Jake, her heart swelling with gratitude. "We made it together," she said softly, feeling the weight of all they had faced. "And that shows how strong we are." Jake turned to her, his expression softened by relief and something deeper. "Casey, I've never felt this kind of connection before," he started, his voice steady, glancing at the frightened faces that had grown resilient beside them. "You've shown me what true strength is. Not just with the storm but in life." Tears glistened in Casey's eyes as she searched his handsome face, understanding dawning. "I see it in you too, Jake. You've become part of this community, and that means more than I can explain." The understanding hung between them, a realization of what they had forged together. As the last howls of the storm faded, Casey knew their journey wasn't merely about weathering the storm, but also about embracing what lay ahead. A new beginning, a connection deepened by their shared struggle. "All right everyone, let's check on the others and make sure everyone's safe," Jake said, regaining his leadership. Together, they led the children back toward the main room, hands joined, hearts pounding with a mix of love and hope. With every step, Casey could feel the air around them change, filled with the promise of tomorrow and the warmth of the bonds they'd built. Together, they stepped back into the light, ready to rebuild and cherish what truly mattered. And as they emerged from the shadows of the storm, something blossomed within Casey's heart. It was hope, a bright, shining promise for tomorrow, a solid belief that love would guide them through any storm that life would throw their way. They had faced the chaos, together, and had come through stronger than ever before. This is the moment that all of us need to embrace. If you felt that pulse of change, that rise of hope, subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss more stories that inspire and ignite the heart. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. We want everyone to be part of this journey. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this ending, because your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is your chance to uplift those you love. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Let us continue building this amazing community together.